Well, since I do have some 29 followers on uh, YouTube, I wanted to do at least a little video to say hello, uh, as with a sense of obligation, or at least to keep this channel alive. I think the views have diminished because I haven't been doing anything in Spanish since I stopped doing the daily program for Radio Maria Peru. And I'm going to do a Spanish equivalent of this afterwards. I don't think it'll take more than 15 minutes or so, I hope. Uh, and all I wanted to say was that these are very sobering times, full of bad news, and I do think that obviously the interest of the media, of whatever side it's on, is of course to create excitement, breaking news. Everything now has to be breaking news, or apparently it doesn't count. People's attentions have become dull. Attentions, span and capacity to, the mindfulness have become dulled, if they ever were developed in any case. So there is this element of creating some sort of hysteria on both sides to some extent, but there is lots of reason for us to be incredibly concerned, and I would point primarily to the planet and its climate, and also to the COVID crisis and the reaction that we as humans are having, and especially here in America. And so we have this latest report, I think in a series of reports, each time uh, expressing, I think, some sort of surprise that the rate of planetary deterioration is increasing, and is surprising. And so when we have the very planet in jeopardy, and this is obviously felt in many places with floods and fires and the heat. I know in Italy it's incredible, the kind of heat they are experiencing, and even here in the United States. I mean, if this isn't a call for conversion and to really, really reassess what kind of lifestyle we want and can sustain, even. I was just reading National Catholic Reporter. I think it was Cardinal Kupich saying that limitless development is not the same thing as human progress or bettering one's life. So that um, there can be no debate on the climate issue. I said in one of my programs that many years ago in the seminary where I taught, one of my colleagues, probably uh, listening to Bush, George W. Bush, who was poo-pooing the effect of human activity on climate change. That's really part of a political uh, philosophy of letting business do what it will for growth and jobs and all these things. Well, this colleague of mine was poo-pooing, and he was an engineer and a theologian, quite learned, really. He's still around, friend of mine. He was poo-pooing this, which I believe, of course, is part of the enticement. There is to dispel unpleasant thoughts. So we have a propensity to dismiss what is unpleasant. This is Psychology 101. And that's why when we are attracted to an idea, we should examine, do I have hidden psychological or semi hidden psychological motivations to embrace this idea and to deny some other idea? The famous denial of alcoholics and all that stuff. And so, um, he was poo-pooing that, and my response at the time, and this is probably close to 20 years ago, was, look, the science is not something I am an expert on or could discuss, nor do I think you could. But I do know theologically, and we were both, theologians, that abuse of anything has consequences. It's a bad idea. We can apply this to our own bodies and everything else. So that the scientific work is not what we need to do to understand, or to believe that we must act very reverently toward our common home, as Pope Francis has said. And that is the important thing, to have the proper attitude toward creation, which means the proper attitude toward um, our lifestyle, how much we spend and waste, and how we live and how we construct things. I heard a long time ago that uh, when cars began to be manufactured, many of the big, of the companies that would become very big, I guess, were against public transportation because they wanted to sell cars. You cannot, do without cars here in Florida or in California or in many other places. When I arrived in Boston to study in 1978, I sold my car within a matter of a month or two. I didn't need a car in Boston. When they offered me underground parking, which was what I was hoping for, I said I either decide to keep the car or not keep the car. And in fact, after an experience in which I was looking for a dazer lamp, and I drove around and drove around trying to find the place, and I couldn't. I went back to my apartment. I called the place and I said, "How do you get there?" And they said, "You take the T, the Boston subway, to this stop, and you're here." And I said to myself, I mean, what am I doing with a car driving around like a nut and spending money when I don't need it because of public transportation? So if we applied those principles of energy efficiency, etc., then we would have this real conversion towards the well-being of the planet underway, and we're far from that. And of course, people, and I think the manipulative, media, more right wing than anything, poo-poo this human factor. And again, I look at it not scientifically, but from a position of faith and philosophy. The philosophers are also in agreement with a simpler life, a life where you don't waste, a life where you don't abuse. Even I think hedonists and Epicureans, who believed that the main purpose in life was to get happiness and pleasure, understood that if you abused, drink and food, you would maybe have some momentary pleasure, but with long lasting lack of pleasure and pain. So that, as far as that is concerned, that is a big, big concern. And in the COVID situation, whether this thing started in a lab, which would be, it's not, it seems to be quite possible in Wuhan. What's amazing is that scientists were able to create this vaccine. And I, for the life of me, since I am not in contact with these, I call it the dark web, these purveyors of fake news and polarization, even Berlusconi, a corrupt, super rich Italian politician and media magnate in Italy, says the COVID crisis is not a political issue, it is a scientific issue, a medical issue. You can't use it to attack the other side for political gain. And that's what has happened. Half of the United States is not vaccinated. Incredible. Smart people that I know in South America, my friend whose brother was in the hospital with a tube and a tracheotomy due to COVID. She also, because she listens to these things, a brilliant girl, woman, my age almost, she listens to these Catholic and right wing type media that have to attack the other side who believes in science and listens to the CDC and Fauci. And, the governor of Florida says, don't Fauci me, etc. As if Fauci were some sort of manipulator after, I guess 40 years in this kind of uh, government science position. I can't understand that. It's a visceral reaction to these lies and these false concerns. And now you see these people in the hospital with COVID. And as I've said before, it's not just them and their children. You know, all kinds of kids in Florida schools now who are told by the governor masks are bad for you, and who can't get vaccinated, or their parents believe you shouldn't get vaccinated. Then you have these interviews, oh, I should have been vaccinated. It's too late now, but this and that. I can't understand how people can be. Well, first of all, the fault lies not in these masses of overwhelmed by information and confusion people. Because at the end of the day, these are simple, very uneducated people for the most part, or people susceptible to these media that get them fired up and attack the godless other side, etc. But the real culprits to me are the heads of the media that score points with that. They polarize. They cater to their base, by saying stuff the base is already hearing in other media. I mean, the governor of Florida actually had an event where he only allowed, I think, Fox News to be present. I mean, all this to me is incredibly evil and incredibly stupid. And not only, it's not something that affects the unvaccinated. They become breeding grounds for mutations of this virus which have already taken place and that take place when the virus is free to multiply. So eventually we're going, the ones of us, those of us who are vaccinated will need a booster. And eventually it may be that a strain comes up that will then require a very different vaccination, or there may not be a new vaccination for that new strain. Just like there's a point where we cross in the damage to the earth where we can't go back. So these to me are all reasons for conversion and finding religion. My cardiologist told me the other day, unless you find religion, your blood work's not going to improve. So I'm not holding myself up as a model of perfection, but I'm aware of it and I try. That's the best we can. That's what we need to do, and not only try. The Kennedys. I saw a program on Ethel Kennedy the other day. They weren't supposed to try. They were supposed to win, which really just means try really hard. Don't just say I'm going to try and maybe next week, which is something that doesn't really work. So my only words are, think of the planet, be of course be vaccinated. Think of our folly in not being vaccinated and listening to the wrong people and inventing reasons not to be vaccinated when this vaccine works incredibly well. As I said, I had my first shingles shot without any consequences. I had my second shingles shot with some hours of discomfort, nausea. I had my two Moderna COVID shots without absolutely any noticeable uh, effect that I could tell. So this is all I want to say in this brief video. Hang in there. I'm trying to hang in there. Good things begin to happen if you persevere. I've been experiencing some good things happening with some perseverance, and I know I need to start and or persevere in other areas, and good things again will also happen. Obviously, reading and thinking of God and understanding things helps quite a bit. The philosophical life. I'm now on page 850 of N.T. Wright's book on Paul, two-volume book on Paul. And so this is my nourishment as well as some, social gatherings. I had a lot of fun Saturday at a party with older ladies, much older, most of them anyway. And we just laughed a lot. We were in great moods. We drank wine. We ate paella, and we had a great time. So good things do take place, but these are very sober times, and we really need to pay attention to what is going on.